In the early morning hours of April 9, 1940, Denmark, long committed to peace and strict neutrality, awoke to the sound of marching boots, roaring aircraft engines, and an invasion that would forever alter its national destiny. The German military operation, known as Operation Weserübung, was designed to secure strategic control of Northern Europe, and Denmark stood directly in its path. What followed was one of the swiftest and most unexpected military occupations in modern European history. To understand how Denmark fell in just a few hours, we must first examine the geopolitical pressures building across Europe in the late 1930s. Nazi Germany's expansionist ambitions were accelerating rapidly. After occupying Austria and dismembering Czechoslovakia, Hitler had turned his gaze towards Scandinavia. Denmark, despite its peaceful stance, was situated in a location too strategically important for Germany to ignore. For Germany, control of the Danish Straits, those narrow waters connecting the North Sea to the Baltic, was essential. These waterways formed a critical naval route that allowed the German fleet to maneuver without interference from Britain. Moreover, Denmark's geographic position provided a perfect launching point for the forthcoming invasion of Norway. If Denmark remained neutral or aligned itself with the Allies, it could jeopardize Germany's northern campaign. Thus, Hitler's planners concluded that Denmark must be taken swiftly, with overwhelming force, and ideally without prolonged resistance. German intelligence suggested that Denmark had limited military capacity and that its government was unlikely to sacrifice civilian lives in a hopeless fight. With this assessment in mind, Germany prepared an invasion that was as psychological as it was military. As dawn approached on April 9, German forces were already moving. At 4:15 a.m., armored units crossed the land border from Schleswig-Holstein. Motorized troops advanced rapidly along key roads, overwhelming small Danish border posts. Soldiers who expected nothing more than routine patrols suddenly faced tanks, machine gun fire, and paratroopers descending from the sky. The Luftwaffe played a crucial role in the invasion. German aircraft executed low-altitude intimidation flights over Copenhagen, signaling to the Danish government that resistance would bring severe consequences. The message was unmistakable. Any refusal to surrender could result in the bombing of the capital. Despite being taken by surprise, several Danish units attempted to resist. In the town of Haderslev, Danish soldiers engaged German armored cars in a fierce skirmish, managing to inflict casualties and even disable some vehicles. At Luntoftbjerg, anti-tank gunners fought bravely against the advancing forces. These brief clashes demonstrated the courage of the Danish military, but they had little effect on the outcome. Germany possessed overwhelming numerical and technological superiority, and the invasion was progressing far too rapidly for Danish forces to mount a coordinated defense. Meanwhile, confusion spread throughout Copenhagen. Civilians gathered in the streets as German planes thundered overhead. Government ministers held emergency meetings as phone lines buzzed with conflicting reports from across the country. King Christian X, deeply concerned for civilian safety, joined discussions with the cabinet to determine the nation's response. Within hours, the grim reality became clear. Denmark faced annihilation if it chose to resist. The Luftwaffe stood ready to bomb key infrastructure and population centers. The army lacked the equipment necessary to hold even a single day against the German Blitz. After intense debate, the government made one of the most difficult decisions in Danish history. At approximately 6:30 a.m., Denmark surrendered in order to prevent widespread civilian casualties and the destruction of Copenhagen. Thus, in less than 6 hours, Denmark was occupied. It was one of the fastest military defeats ever recorded during World War II. But the story did not end with surrender. The nature of the occupation was unlike many others in Europe. Germany allowed the Danish government, courts, and monarchy to remain in place for the first several years. Daily life continued with a remarkable degree of normalcy, at least on the surface. This arrangement, known as the Model Protectorate, was intended to ensure Danish cooperation and prevent unrest. However, beneath this facade of calm, resentment and resistance were quietly growing. Danish workers engaged in strikes, students formed underground organizations, and acts of sabotage began to increase. Newspapers published coded messages, while resistance members gathered intelligence for the Allies. The most heroic chapter of the Danish resistance was the rescue of Danish Jews in 1943. When the Germans planned mass arrests, Danish citizens mobilized swiftly, ferrying more than 7,000 Jews across the Øresund Strait to safety in neutral Sweden. By late 1943, Germany's patience with Denmark wore thin. After widespread strikes and sabotage, Germany imposed martial law, dissolving the cooperative arrangement. The occupation became harsher, but the Danish resistance only grew stronger. As the tide of war shifted against Germany, Denmark became a crucial point of intelligence gathering and sabotage. Resistance fighters disrupted railway lines, targeted factories producing goods for the German army, and coordinated with British forces. Finally, on May 5, 1945, Denmark was liberated as German forces across Western Europe collapsed. Crowds poured into the streets waving Danish flags that had been hidden for years. The long, complex chapter of occupation had come to an end. Today, the German invasion of Denmark stands as a vivid reminder of how fragile peace can be. It illustrates how a nation devoted to neutrality can find itself drawn into conflict simply because of geography and the ambitions of larger powers. But it is also a story of quiet courage, national unity, and the determination of ordinary people to resist oppression in any way they can. Though the invasion lasted mere hours, its impact shaped Denmark's national identity for generations. It remains a powerful lesson about the dangers of unchecked aggression, the complexities of wartime diplomacy, and the enduring strength of the human spirit.